Before the heat rises over the Egyptian desert, a horn echoes across the sand. From rows of mud-brick barracks, thousands of men emerge into the pale dawn. They stretch sore muscles, wrap their sandals, and march toward a mountain not made by nature, but by human hands. What they are building will outlast empires, languages, and kings. It will defy wind and time for over 4,000 years. And though their names are forgotten, their work remains. The Great Pyramid of Giza, an eternal monument to human endurance, faith, and genius. This isn't a story about slaves under the whip. It's the story of a nation united by belief, by the dream of building for eternity. The pyramid builders were not chained laborers, but citizens, farmers, artisans, and craftsmen summoned to serve their pharaoh during the months when the Nile flooded their fields. They called this duty corvée labor, a sacred service that repaid the gods who sustained Egypt. At the edge of the desert, they built a city, a living, breathing organism dedicated to one purpose. There were bakeries that could feed an army, breweries bubbling with beer, workshops that sharpened copper tools and shaped wooden sleds. Nearby, families cooked, traded, and raised children under the shadow of the growing monument. Archaeologists uncovered their quarters, long barracks arranged in straight rows, storage rooms stacked with jars of grain and meat. Even their graffiti survives, crew names scratched into blocks, the drunkards of Menkaure, the friends of Khufu. Not insults, team pride. Proof that these men saw themselves as part of something monumental. Every day began before sunrise. A thin mist drifted from the Nile as foremen shouted orders and workers grabbed their tools, wooden sleds, ropes, and copper chisels. The camps woke to the scent of bread baking in clay ovens and the sweet tang of fermenting beer. Breakfast was simple. Coarse loaves, onions, and water from clay jars cooled overnight in the sand. By mid-morning, the desert turned white-hot. Teams of men hauled massive limestone blocks across wetted sand, an ancient engineering trick that reduced friction by nearly half. Overseers beat drums to keep rhythm, 1-2 pull, 1-2 pull. Each chant lifted the weight together. Dust coated their bodies like armor. Their hands were raw, their backs lined with salt. But this was no punishment, it was purpose. When the sun fell, the desert cooled. Fires flickered in the workers' village, laughter echoing through the alleys. They shared rations of bread and beer, sometimes beef or goat for the strongest gangs. And when one of them died, he was buried nearby, with bread, beer, and amulets for the journey to the afterlife. They were not slaves thrown into sand. They were Egypt's builders, ordinary people who carved the impossible into stone. The Great Pyramid wasn't built by a handful of men. It was an entire civilization at work. Every region of Egypt contributed something: copper from Sinai, granite from Aswan, limestone from Tura, timber from Lebanon. Government officials tracked it all: supplies, rations, workforce shifts. Scribes filled rolls of papyrus with tallies, ensuring every worker was fed, every tool accounted for. The Nile was the lifeline. In flood season, its swollen waters turned Egypt into a highway. Quarried stone was ferried downstream on barges, then moved through man-made canals that ran right up to the Giza Plateau. A massive ramp system connected the harbour to the work site, where foremen coordinated thousands of men to move, lift, and set each block in its exact place. From quarry to ramp, from ramp to summit, Egypt moved as one machine. A single block could weigh over 2 tons. Hauling it across the sand took teams of 20 to 30 men. They tied thick ropes of papyrus fibre, poured water to slick the sand, and dragged in rhythm, guided by chants that echoed across the desert. The sound of work was everywhere: the crack of stone against copper, the creak of sleds, the crash of limestone onto ramps. Each strike, each pull, each shout became part of a living symphony, the heartbeat of construction. And within that rhythm there was order. Egyptians built with precision, not chaos. Every layer of the pyramid was planned, measured, and recorded. When a gang finished its section, it carved its mark into the stone, leaving a silent signature for eternity. The Great Pyramid was not an accident of brute force. It was a masterpiece of geometry. Its base forms a nearly perfect square. Each side aligns almost exactly with true north, south, east, and west, deviating by less than a 20th of a degree. How did they achieve that? By watching the sky. Astronomer priests used stars like Thuban in the constellation Draco to find true north. With ropes, sighting rods, and shadows, they charted a plan so precise that it remains unmatched for thousands of years. Even its proportions carry hidden elegance. The height and perimeter reflect mathematical constants that appear again in later geometry. Coincidence or intention? For the Egyptians, architecture was faith made visible. To build straight was to honor Ma'at, the divine order that held the universe together. Forget tales of lasers and aliens. The true marvel lies in simple tools used with extraordinary intelligence. Copper chisels cut soft limestone. Harder stones like granite were shaped by pounding with dolerite balls. Smooth, heavy stones still found at ancient quarries. Wooden sleds, levers, and ropes did the rest. Archaeologists recreated these methods, and the math holds. With enough coordination, each block could be placed in minutes. The secret wasn't mystery. It was manpower, mathematics, and unrelenting discipline. And through it all, the workers sang. The same chants their fathers had sung, timed to the rhythm of effort, echoing up the ramps and across the centuries. When the final stone was set, the builders stood back and saw something the world had never seen before. A mountain of limestone gleaming in the sun. The white casing stones, polished smooth, turned the pyramid into a mirror of light. It reflected the sun so brightly that travelers miles away described it as a second sunrise. At its peak rested the capstone, covered in gold, glowing at dawn. The pyramid was not just a tomb. It was a staircase to the heavens, guiding the pharaoh's soul towards the gods. For decades it blazed in the desert light, a symbol of divine order, unity, and human ambition. Centuries passed. Dynasties rose and fell. The casing stones were stripped for other buildings, and the workers' city was swallowed by sand. But the pyramid endured. It became a riddle for future civilizations, a question carved into the face of time. How did they build it? Why with such perfection? And what drove them to dedicate lifetimes to stone? The answer lies not in mystery, but in meaning.
Keep pulling! Hold the line! He's falling! Pull! Pull harder!
The pyramid will rise from this very spot.
Our scribes have meticulously prepared the plans.
They built because they believed that to honor their pharaoh was to honor life itself. To them, work was worship and creation was sacred. The pyramid stands not as proof of alien hands, but of human hearts, organized, determined, and faithful to something greater than themselves.
Hear my command!
Over here!
We're building a new home.
Let's go!
This is good.
We swear our lives to the Pharaoh.
Heave. Again. Strike true.
More water! Keep it wet! It's moving! Pull harder! Keep the rhythm! Move as one!
Before the pyramid could rise, the stones had to travel, and in ancient Egypt the river was the road. The Nile flowed like a silver serpent through the heart of the kingdom, slow, powerful, eternal. Every year, when it swelled with the flood, it became Egypt's greatest ally. Barges and rafts lined the shore, made of cedar and papyrus, lashed tight with ropes thicker than a man's arm. Along the eastern cliffs, the quarries thundered with the sound of dolerite pounding limestone. Teams worked day and night to cut perfect blocks from the mountain side. Each block, carved, measured, marked, was dragged to the riverbank on wooden sleds greased with oil and water. And there the river crews waited. Hundreds of men leaned into ropes, grunting in rhythm as they guided the stone onto floating platforms. The wood creaked. The rope screamed under the weight, then silence as the stone settled into place. The barge dipped, steadied, and began its slow drift toward destiny. It was not just transport, it was ritual. The lifeblood of the project flowed with the current, feeding the pyramid from miles away. When the barges reached the western shore, the mood shifted. The singing stopped. Now came the hard part. The river's calm gave way to the grind of sand and stone. Hundreds of men stood waiting with sleds and levers. They anchored thick ropes to wooden posts buried deep in the ground. The command rang out, and the air filled with strain and sound. 1, 2, pull. 1, 2, pull. The ropes went taut, muscles bulged, sand flew. The blocks slid forward, slow, relentless, unstoppable. Up ahead, the pyramid loomed, massive, still incomplete, its ramps snaking upward like the coils of a giant serpent. The higher they built, the longer and steeper those ramps became. Every block had to climb the mountain that man himself had made. The work never stopped, not when the sun scorched the sand to fire, not when the wind carried grit that cut into the skin like knives. Day after day, the men returned to the ramps, their shoulders bruised, their hands split open from rope and stone. Their bodies told the story, backs bent from lifting, scars running across forearms and knees. Some limped from old wounds that never healed, and yet they kept climbing. They worked in shifts, one crew replacing another, as the pyramid grew higher and the air thinner with dust.
The eastern ramp is on schedule, Pharaoh. The stonework is precise.
We must work faster! That sounds good. You heard the Pharaoh. Move! Move faster! Put your backs into it! Heave!
A silver thread connecting Earth to eternity, and still they climbed, still they pulled, still they believed. Every block that reached to the top was a victory. Every stone placed brought them one step closer to touching the sun. Water was precious, rationed from jars that cracked under the heat. The beer that had once refreshed them now dulled the pain just enough to keep them moving. At night, the camps fell quiet. Men lay on mats of woven reed, their muscles trembling long after the day was done. Some stared up at the stars, tracing the constellations their priests said guided the pharaoh's soul. Others simply closed their eyes, dreaming of the Nile, of wives and children waiting beyond the floodplain. It was more than fatigue. It was devotion, a test of will that blurred the line between faith and endurance. They sang not out of joy, but to keep time with the ropes, a steady rhythm that reminded them they were part of something vast. Each pull, each chant was a promise to one another. We will finish this. We will see it stand. And even in exhaustion, there was pride. Because every stone placed meant the gods were watching. Every breath, every scar, every drop of sweat was an offering, proof that they had given everything a human being could give.